My name is Ian Ginn. I'm the host of Digital Talk. As part of our podcast related to Telco for Good, we want to expand our discussions to include leadership and innovation. From this one line from his bio, you might guess who it is, where it says, Matt is a strong believer in building bridges, bringing together people, industries behind a common cause. Without further ado, it's therefore my great pleasure to introduce our guest, Matt Granryd. To open Series 3, the former Director General of GSMA, now serving on the board of Telenor and Ratos, and advising organizations such as the UN at the intersection of connectivity and sustainability. Welcome to the podcast, Mats.
Well, thank you very much, Ian. What an introduction. It's a great honor to be here and to sort of start the new year with the podcast. Can there be anything better?
It's a real pleasure to have you and, I say, inaugural guest here on the podcast. Do you mind expanding a bit on that introduction that I've made there and give us some sort of insight as to what you're doing? As you'll know, you're well known in the telco industry anyway, but also you obviously had a leading light as the leader of the GSMA. And so what's keeping you busy now, having left there? That was over a year ago.
Well, exactly. As you said, I stepped down or retired in end of March of last year. And since then, I've picked up a couple of board roles. I'm the chairman of the board of a big utility company in Europe called Vattenfall. And that takes up a lot of my time. And then I'm chairman of the board of something called Business Sweden, which is the trade organization for Sweden, export and import, which is sort of like GSMA, but all technology, all industries, but only one country, you could sort of maybe say. And then, as you rightly said, I'm on the board of Telenor and Ratos. And Ratos is a private equity company in Northern Europe. So that keeps me quite busy. I do not do much work with the United Nations anymore. I'm a bit active within the B team, which is a pretty interesting organization.
What does that do?
Well, B team is a bunch of leaders who believe in conducting business in a sustainable way. And we meet 2-3 times a year or so, and we share ideas and try to find out best practices and how to handle various different topics. But the real interest with B team is really the really interesting people there. I get a lot of energy and insights from being part of that group. And I've been a leader at B team for more than 10 years now. So that's something that I find great enjoyment in. So that keeps me busy. I think that I work as much now as I did when I was with GSMA. The only thing is that I don't get paid anymore. That's the only problem.
I see. Well, I'm sure there are more people knocking on your door if they can get your time for free as well. But as you say, I think that is the risk that happens. People retire, but actually that can also opens a whole nother Pandora's box of other things they can do.
Yeah, but you know, Ian, that was really my intention. I retired from GSMA for 2 reasons. One is that I believe that it's good with some rotation, especially in leadership roles, that, you know, after 10 years in the same role, you tend to get a bit stale. And an organization such as GSMA, you definitely need to be on your toes continuously. So that was one. And then for my own sake, I wanted to try and see if I would find enjoyment and challenge in being sort of a professional board player. And so far, I must say I do enjoy it, even though I do miss tremendously the team at GSMA and all the interactions with the beautiful yet brutal industry as telecom. But as you said, I'm part of Telenor, so I get flavor of that anyway.
Today's episode is sponsored by IFG Consulting Europe, who help operators to tap into technologies to accelerate digitization of the network, drive revenues, and reduce costs by championing promising software providers in telecoms, enterprise, and mobile markets. Go to ifgconsultingeurope.com to find out more.
And what about your legacy in relation to, you know, I call it telecoms for good, people call it tech for good, but in particular I call it simplified telecoms good. I mean, you were also a champion of, I think, the GSMA and them signing up to the UN Sustainability Development Goals. And so what's your take on that, in the sense of, do you still feel the industry is signing up and really sort of delivering against those? And really, score out of 10, what score would you give the industry at the moment, and why?
That's a good question, Ian. I think that just coming back from Davos, which was a very interesting Davos this year with all the geopolitical tensions left, right, and center, there was obviously a lot of talk around sustainability and geopolitics and safety and resilience. So I would say that the industry, or the world, maybe I should say, have matured when it comes to sustainability. I think many companies view sustainability not as a add-on thing, but sustainability is really the business. That's really the strategy. But you don't necessarily need to advocate continuously about the 17 SDGs or the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. You are talking about business. And by doing good business is doing business sustainable. It's sort of what we tried with after the pandemic at GSMA is to turn it around. Instead of having the SDG lead the way, actually the business needs to lead the way. The companies have to lead the way and use the SDGs as a propeller, if you would like, and propel them forward. And when I look at the various companies that I see, and I've read reports, by and large, everyone is continuing. Everyone is continuing down the path of equality, around climate, etc. So I would say that the world has matured into where I hope it will be, because then it becomes almost like a self-playing piano, if you would like, that companies see benefits in it. It's not for show. It's not greenwashing or anything like that. It's actually real good business. And when it is real good business, it continues to flow in that direction. So I would sort of rate the mobile industry very high. I think that we have done a tremendous job as an industry. I'm not exactly sure from 1 to 10, but it's certainly above 7, maybe not 10, but it is really a well thought through plan. And you can literally ask any CEO and they would all have a good strategy, good understanding, and a clear link to good business that is propelled from sustainability.
And what do you think's driving that, turning it, as you said, turning on its head in a way, from something that was just, let's say, some sort of guardrails to something which is part of the business? Is it to do with them having to, I guess, seed their own business interests, if you like, in the sense of, if I don't have happy, wealthy customers that can actually connect to the world and use digital, they're not going to be economically strong enough to actually consume my services? Or what do you think is the sort of driver behind that? You call it good business, but what is that? Am I on the right track there, or do you have some other view?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think it's the ethical behavior of companies that sort of is appealing to me as a customer or to me as a business. So when you, Ian, wants to have looking for a new provider, that you would, in your mind, think of a company that I can associate with this company. It's a brand that I feel comfortable with. And a brand that you feel comfortable with is most likely an ethical company that stands for something. And that something, I would argue, is around a sustainable way of doing business. It showcases an ethical behavior in all different dimensions. Basically, the whole 17 SDGs, depending on where you are and what type of industry you are in. So I think from that perspective, I think we have managed to move the industry to be in the lead, and the SDGs are propelling, instead of, as it was initially, that the SDGs were pulling the industry. And not only telco, but all industries. I think it has sort of turned on its head. And that is good, because then it becomes truly sustainable.
I mean, you yourself are a champion and always have been, I think. At least I've always seen you as one of this. In your board role, do you see that also rubbing off on some of the other board members? Is that the drum that you're beating at the board table as well, to make sure that these things are covered? Or
that's a really clever question, actually. Absolutely. And I think that's, it's sort of linked to a clear purpose as well. You at least what makes me tick is exactly that you see the combination of doing good business. That is absolutely the most important. But doing good business in a sustainable way. Then you have hit something that is not only here for the coming few years, but is actually here for eternity maybe, or at least for many, many years. So, and in Northern Europe and many places in the world, being an ethical player, understanding the impact we have on climate and on nature and try to mitigate that. The impact we have as industry leaders on equality, pay gap, gender, age, ethnicity, etc., is really critical. And if you believe that you as a company become better if you have a more equal workforce, if you have a more divided or more represented when it comes to gender, ethnicity, and age, for instance, then I think you're into something really interesting. And if you look at the board roles I have, they're all in that world. If it's utility or telecom or private equity or this trade thing, they all have the same type of purpose-driven understanding. And it comes by and large, or you can derive it in one way or another from the SDGs.
And so related to maybe your current roles or also previously, are any particular sort of projects, initiatives that you've been involved with which you feel have made sort of real concrete difference?
In the business sense, or?
Well, in the sense of, coming back tech for good and telco for good. So where you're actually, telco for good for me are things like, reach, meaning more connectivity, or more people can actually access technology in the first place. Maybe there are other initiatives. I mean, obviously in your role, I know you're involved with Women for Tech. I think you're a strong advocate for women in tech, but I just wonder if there's any particular stories, because at the end of the day, one thing is to be a believer in it, but I guess what the real, let's say, motivation for you is when you actually get the feedback from someone saying, Thank you, Mats, for doing that. You've made a difference to my life. And is there anything that you can point to which sticks in the back of your mind like that?
Yeah, no, I have plenty of those stories, and that makes me really happy and have a good, warm feeling from. And I would maybe say then that the usage gap that we have tried to bridge, there is two gaps, basically. It's a usage gap and a coverage gap. So roughly 400 million people on the planet are yet to be covered by a mobile broadband. Mobile broadband is 3G, 4G, or 5G. So I take away 2G. So 400 million by and large. Then you have 3.2 billion or 3.3 billion people that are covered with a mobile broadband service, but they cannot use it for some reason or another. That's the usage gap. So that's a 35-40% of everyone on the planet. And then you have the balance 60% that are using mobile internet. You and I would be one of those. But this usage gap has reduced. But what has really reduced is the coverage gap that is now down to 400 million. That came from several billion people 10 years ago. That's now down to 400. So making sure that people can use the mobile broadband services is really, really important, because we don't want to have a divided world. The ones that are able to access internet, mobile internet, and those that don't. And when I meet people, I have several stories from Africa about healthcare providers that can actually work now, if not 7/24, at least prolong the day, because when it gets dark, and you don't have any, maybe you have a candle, but you don't have a proper light. With solar panels, with something called M-Kopa, that's just one brand name, there are plenty, whereby you would have M-Pesa, the mobile money service, and an IoT connection to a box that you acquire with very low amount of money, very small amount of money, and you do regular installments to pay off this box. With that, you have a solar panel, you have a couple of lights, maybe a torch, and a radio. And that means tremendous amount of safety and possibilities for the families that live off-grid. The torch, if you need to go out during night and use the facilities, you don't need to stumble across in the dark. It's a safety thing. You can have your children study much longer than the daylight. So it becomes, and then you can listen to radio and get informed of what's actually happening. So it is a tremendous uplift in quality of life for so many people. And the service is there. It is just to bridge the usage gap. And we know why people don't want to or cannot connect to mobile internet. And it's really four things. The first thing is affordability of handsets. We know that handsets in many parts of the world are being taxed extortionately high because it is viewed as a luxury goods. So taxation on handsets. We know that there is a skill gap, square thing, I don't know how to use it. And thirdly is that there is a lot of apprehension on safety and security concerns on being on internet. And we have the debate going on now in Australia and then the UK and also in Sweden on should we have a threshold for age to use social media. That is obviously there as well. And fourthly is that there might not be any local content relevant to me in my local language. I mean, I could maybe see Barack Obama or a movie, that's all good, but it's nothing really that really gets my juices flowing. So we need to have innovation on the edge to reduce the step in, if you would like, on local content. We need to have education on safety and security. We need to have education on skills, and then we need to lower the taxation on handsets. Those are really the four main barriers. There could be others, but those are the four main barriers. And we know them, and that is something that we need to work with. But again, there are plenty of stories on how well people are viewing this mobile device that I can actually go on internet, and it has changed people's lives. In markets where you, as a woman, have to pay someone to take care of your cash when you're out selling vegetables or garments or whatever it might be, fabrics, whatever it might be. Traditionally, you would give the money to someone who collects it, and then eventually you'll get it back, hopefully minus a fee. Now with M-Pesa, with a mobile phone, that money goes directly to the woman, and she has the money. And we all know that women predominantly are spending and investing into the family, while we men predominantly, generalizing of course, might spend it on other things that is more self-centric and less family. So it is a very positive circle, all of these things. If you can get more mobile broadband in the hands of bridging that usage gap to 3.2 billion people, you can narrow that down. For every person we get on mobile broadband internet, there is a possibility that that person will thrive and have an identity online.
So one of the things we try and do on this podcast is sort of elevate these stories to a point that other people can maybe hear about them and profit from them. And one of the last episodes we've recorded, so feel free to go and listen to it yourself, other than obviously this one, is with Orange Energies, which is very much in line with what you just described, with providing clean solar energy for the communities. And there are other ones which I also remember, because you were also talking about content being relevant. And one of the things I remember you were the still director of the GSMA, Director General of the GSMA, was the problem we maybe have with large language models and that sort of narrowing the field of, let's say, history and culture being taken forward through language models. I think at the time 7 languages likely to be supported. We've also had 1 or 2 podcasts around people there trying to make a difference by using language models to enrich their own society and remember their own society, because that's another thing through aging. The younger people are not staying with the technology, or let's say the history is being lost because, as you mentioned, them watching some sort of Netflix film, whatever, in the West is not going to keep them in line with their cultural heritage as well. So those are all, I think, absolutely great things. But one thing, I mean, you are, as I say, recognized as a leader. Is there someone in the industry that you look up to who's also driving change and inspiring? And what do you find inspiring about what they do?
Oh, plenty of people that I admire. I admire almost anyone that is in the world of business and the entrepreneurial aspect of it, and especially when it's linking into the sustainability and purpose. I can mention several, but Jose Maria Alvarez Payete, my previous chairman, is one that I listen to a lot. You don't need to go on a specific training course. You just have a 15 minutes coffee with him, and I've learned a ton of stuff from him. He's quite a remarkable person, I think.
Okay. And what is it particular that inspires you about what he has to say? Is it his clarity or?
The way he thinks and the way he thinks around data and privacy, and how we as individuals should obviously own our own data and be the governor of how that data is being used and sold and capitalized on. And he has a lot of different ideas around that. So I learn a lot when I talk to him.
Last year, this podcast was invited to the ITU AF for Good Summit. And one of the takeaways there was that Generation Alpha, I think they're called now, were basically brought up in an AI world. And the question I wanted to ask you there is that what's your view about leadership in AI? Because, I mean, if you're, as you say, you're now in the chair board of these big organizations, how are you tackling AI and using it in a constructive, positive way and ensuring that it actually is again doing good for us as society? But before you answer, I just want to add in the question I have in my mind is about energy usage, because it's one thing, that's a big bugbear of mine as well. But anyway, just if you wanted to comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a very living and current topic, AI and AI usage, and how we use it in the boardroom. I mean, in many of my boards, we have gone on have training sessions and try to keep up with sort of the current models. But it's developing so quickly, and within the organization, it is being used quite elaborately. If you take in the case of Vattenfall, for instance, where we then have these salmon ladders, I believe it's called, when salmon need to swim up.
Swim up, yeah.
Yeah, one of those hydropower. We have a whole bunch of hydropower in many parts of Northern Europe. And as a payback to nature, we need to establish these salmon ladders. Now, what we do is that we use AI to facial recognition of salmons. So we can identify a salmon down and see if the same salmon has actually reached the top. And surprisingly that's not that many that does that. So we need to use that data to develop smarter and better ladders for salmon to move up. So that's one example, maybe a silly example, but it's one example. And we use much more current weather information. We can take much quicker decisions when it comes to trading of energy. We know there's going to be a lot of sunshine. We know there's going to be a lot of rain in a specific area. We know it's going to be a cold spell here, and we can trade energy in a much more efficient way thanks to AI. So that's sort of on the usage side. Then, of course, AI and the LLMs are requiring a lot of energy. And I think again, back then to Vattenfall, what we have done again then is our salmon farms, where we have fish farms at the very base of some of the hydropower plants. And linked to those hydropower plants, we do have a whole bunch of data centers. And those data centers require a lot of energy, but they also have a lot of spillover rest heat that needs to be taken care of. And we use that heat to grow salmon feed, larvae that salmon love. So you can see there's a nice little ecosystem that you can develop by using this spillover energy from a data center to feed the salmon. And then we can film the salmon when it's swimming up the ladder. I'm generalizing here a bit, but that's sort of that's, and I think when it comes to energy consumption and AI, there will be more energy consumed, no doubt. Exactly how much is difficult. I've seen a lot of different predictions. I've done my own calculation, and it will be some, and if it would be equally distributed over the world, not an issue. It's only a few percent, if that, but it's not. It's going to be quite spotty, and that can create a problem. However, I think that if you draw the comparison to the IT revolution or the implementation of our ERP systems in the late 80s and 90s, what happened is that we became so much more efficient in everything we did. And I can almost promise you that we will see a similar type of efficiency when it comes to AI implementation. We will have better fleet management. We will have better control over our home appliances. We will be much more efficient in the way we drive, etc., etc. So the whole energy consumption net might stay the same, or at least be seriously mitigated downward because of the efficiency. It will go slightly up because of the AI and LLM need more energy, but it will be reduced back down again because of us becoming more efficient. And what the net effect is of AI going forward, let's see. If I have the pleasure to be on another podcast in 10 years' time, Ian, we can draw some conclusions at that time.
10 years' time, yes, that's a long time, which is one of my, of course, questions I like to ask is, and I'll come back to it in a minute. But no, it's very, very interesting indeed. And maybe you can answer that question around 10 years from now. What is it? What is your prediction for 10 years from now? Do you see any particular, let's say, technologies in 10 years from now, where we'll be? AI being one you just mentioned, but generally, where do you see technology in 10 years from now? Are we all going to be, instead of driving cars, for example, maybe have a home drone, large drones, which we just, or backpacks and just go flying around? I don't know. Because at the end of the day, one of the problems we have is the world is very two-dimensional. I was stuck on the ground. And I remember 2 years ago, MWC, there was the flying car. And one of the things that immediately caught my eyes is perfect for narcotics, right? I mean, police are there. I'll get off it. And I was thinking, what police services in the world are going to be able to then suddenly take off? We are, it's we're talking about new dimensions of the world here, but I don't know what your thoughts on that. So where are we going to be in 10 years' time on technology, and particularly around telecommunications? Will we still have mobile phones? I mean, that's another discussion I think happening right now. I know people have tattoos. So people are prepared to have things inserted in them, whatever,
Well,
what's your take?
That is the $1 million question. If I would know, then I would not
You wouldn't be on this podcast.
Sit here. That way. Whatever we can come up with is going to be wrong. And like always, but when you sit in the middle of a revolution or an evolution, it's very difficult to see the speed of it. But once you're sort of through it, within brackets, and you look back and say, oh my, that was a lot of change we did in the last 10, 15 years. And we're going to experience that as well. I think a safe bet would be saying that self-driving cars, even though I would love it, to be able to send a text to my car and it will come and pick me up in 2 minutes outside and drive me wherever and park itself somewhere, which I don't care where. I would love that. That's going to take significantly longer than 10 years, but I would love it. I think that the safe bet would say that technology will be more intuitive, it will be more built in, and it will be more useful for us. I do think that my generation is the last generation that will only manage humans. I think my children and their children, my grandchildren, will be quite fluent in managing a combination of people and bots and be seamless between the two of them. That's what I think. And I do think that we will, in a 10 years time or so, have a bit more sort of awareness of some sort of metaverse, and exactly what that looks like, I'm not sure. You can maybe say that the internet is that already, but I hope that we will be able to conduct more things by itself without human intervention or in the metaverse.
Well, I think we have to go that way, don't we? In a way, don't we? I mean, we have to go into the virtual world because there's only limited capacity of resources on the earth anyway. So how do you expand? You have to create economic environments which don't rely on the physical world.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not that many decades to go before the world is shrinking in population. So we also need to find ways of automating and becoming more efficient for the human race to survive. If we're going to have an economy that is growing, we need to find the resources to cater for that. And most likely, this is maybe 4 or 5 decades down the line, but still, we need to find other means of labor and intelligence. Because I do think that AI will predominantly be an efficiency tool for white-collar jobs. The blue-collar, if you allow me to distinct those two, has by and large been done through the ERP and IT revolution. But the AI will sort of focus more on the white-collar. But what I do hope, Ian, and I know I'm pushing this a bit, but what I do hope is that we as human, we will be excelling in EQ. we will be excelling in emotional competence, where we would be masters of reading a room, getting the right people and bots together to create something that hasn't been created before. And AI and IQ, if you take IQ and EIQ, and I know I'm making this deliberately smaller, but would be taken care of by AI. So the facts, the routine activities that is requiring a lot of mental capacity for us today will be routinely done by a bot. So we can focus on creating cohesive systems that work together with humans and bots together. So I hope that we will then be more of thinking people, humans, and maybe more thinking and more EQ in the future.
You remind me of what someone has said. It's not the bot or the AI you have to worry about. It's the other person that knows how to use them better than you do who's likely to take your job, which I think lines very much with what,
There you go.
you just
there
said.
you go. There you go.
So one of the things we also like to do on this podcast is sort of peel back the onion, as we call it in English, and find out a bit more about the person. I've seen you obviously a number of times on stage. We've met a few times in person briefly. You're normally running between meetings also to be on stage again. But do you have a philosophy of life at all, would you say, that you live by?
Oh, I'm curious. I want to learn. And I think I'm quite fearless in my quest of learning. I have no problems trying stuff. So I think I'm quite grounded as an individual. But I'm curious is always, I do love a proper challenge. I do love to meet new people and sort of getting to know who is this Ian character really? That type of thing. Curious, I think.
Okay. Do you do much AI search beforehand on me? There is another Ian Ginn, and he's in media, but this is the handsome one, remember, the other one.
Of course.
And another question about you and what did you want to be when you were a teenager?
What I wanted to be a pilot.
Okay.
No doubt. Yeah, definitely. I still have a whole bunch of scars on my fingers after my model airplane, trying to start the engine and it backfired and got bloody fingers from that.
Should have followed the instructions.
I did it all myself. So trying to master the art of aviation and flying, albeit, model airplanes. So that's how my interest really started in flying. Now, the model planes flew actually quite well, but I crashed them all eventually. But I never became a pilot or anything. I don't have a license. I've taken a couple of lessons, but I never had really time for it.
But that's a good grounding for entrepreneurs. Say, fail fast. So if your planes took off and crashed, then you just go, oh, it's ideal for an entrepreneur. I mean, I presume even though you're a very busy man, everyone, I presume, has a private life and does hobbies and things. So do you do something which our audience would be interested in or would surprise them as a hobby?
Oh, I think I will disappoint you there. I'm a passionate tennis player. I picked that up again. I played tennis since I was 15, so that's a good 50 years almost. And I've lately picked it up, so I play quite a lot of tennis. I'm playing tomorrow and on Friday, etc. So that's really fun. It's not very fun, but and I do. No, I think that's it. I'm I have a lovely family, and I think that's important as well.
Okay. So, but I mean, being Swedish, I mean, you've got Bjorn Borg and Ed Berg and that. So you've got Class C players there anyway. And so your family is, would you say, your main sort of hobby, if I can use that term?
Yeah.
That's not really the right thing.
Well, I'm so boring. I have two hobbies. I have work and then I have family.
Okay. Well, I don't think that's boring. I think that's just being a solidly grounded person, and that's great. And is there something that left an impression with you of a place that you visited in the past that always reminds you of something and left an impact with you?
Oh, there are plenty of places. We used to live in India for 4 years, and that left me loving the continent. It's not a country, it's a continent. It's huge and it's so diverse. And the amount of skilled people there is astonishing. They're so hardworking, and I just admire their work ethics. So that's one. I would say Bhutan, if you've been to Bhutan, that is a very well-hidden place, well-hidden country. And I think they don't have GDP, they have a happiness index instead, or so it was claimed at least. a small kingdom, and it is, I think what was struck there was the beauty and the serenity, and that people were so kind. Buddhist, obviously, but very kind people, and very, how should I say, close to nature. They live very close to nature. So that I've really had a lasting experience. That, and with India, which is quite fierce, a huge competition, and a really skilled workforce. So I think those two are quite contrasting. You could say Bhutan maybe more like Sweden in some aspects, and India or Delhi, where we live, maybe more like London, maybe.
Understand. Moving to a fun topic, which is, we sort of, with your airplanes, we weren't far away from it, which is around science fiction. Is there something from when you're growing up, from a science fiction perspective, which you wished was real and was available?
Well, yeah, that's the beaming up thing.
Hey, really?
Yeah, wouldn't that be
Yeah.
fantastic?
Beam Me Up Scotty, I think it was.
Beam Me Up
Right?
Scott, exactly. I mean, wouldn't it be fantastic that flying to New York or wherever, that you just need to go in a portal and you disassembled and then you got assembled again in New York instantly over the net, over internet. That would be fantastic. We're all just molecules anyway, so it would be doable theoretically.
There was a podcast recently I listened to where they were talking about doing that, and there is research being done on it, but it supposedly is very, 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 very challenging, and they've done it in a very, 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 very small way. But anyway, no, I agree with that. And funny enough, lots of our guests that we asked that goes really well as one of the questions and whatever. So, are you a man who likes history at all?
A little bit.
Because you may be the next question you may be anticipating, which is there someone historically that you would want to have a conversation with, and what would you discuss?
A person from the history, from his.
Yeah, that's, let's say, or someone you haven't spoken to. I mean, I guess it's or could be historical, or I guess up to you how far back in time you go. Or
but
not.
I mean,
is there anyone in there you went?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many. I mean, we used to live in Egypt as well, and to speak to one of the pharaohs would be beyond exciting. 4,000 years ago or thereabouts. To Ramses or the Hatshepsut or someone like that. That would be astonishing to get their view on life and what really matters for them. But I mean, it's just literally anyone in history. Wouldn't that be fantastic to be able to have a cup of coffee with them?
Yeah. I wonder
a good old Viking would be great as well.
Of course. This is true, which there are. I mean, people don't understand how much certainly Western Europe is basically Viking land still in lots of ways. From a perspective of historical genealogy and whatever, and languages and whatever. I mean, it goes a long way back, but they covered their ground, didn't they? They got along. And so, and the last maybe sort of question is legacy. As I say, I know you said we'll do a podcast in 10 years' time. I was going to offer you one in 40 years' time, which is the other prediction you made, but I think we might be pushing it by then. I'm not sure. But is the legacy you want to leave behind and be known for?
The legacy would be a more sustainable world that is more connected. So the usage gap, I would really hope to see being diminished, if not closed completely. And I would so much want us as humans to come up with a way of dealing with nature, dealing with this precious planet in a sustainable way, because we only have one planet, and we're quite alone in this vast universe. We better take care of it. It's not that big. So making sure that nature is healthy as it can be, and we live in harmony with nature. You can just try to stop breathing and see how well that works for you. So, I mean, we all need to have, we're all part of nature. It sort of gets close to us one way or another.
Yeah. And telecoms can help there, I think, it can help. We've had a number of also guests on who've been, really sort of using science and trying to investigate, and because knowledge is power, right? At the end of the day, if you know animals are dying out or their breeding habits, or coming back to your salmon example, these are all things which allow us to then sort of maybe take corrective action, let's call it, or appropriate action. Yeah, that's a good one. So one of the things we also like to do is, because we're a positive podcast about positive stories, so I want to give you the opportunity to do a shout out. who would you like to give a shout out to and why?
Well, I would like to give a shout out to Lea Seligman, who is the CEO of the B team. A fantastic leader who has a beautiful voice and can so well articulate the importance of business and sustainability in perfect harmony. So, Lea Seligman.
So you're now part of the Digital Talk family. So thanks for being our guest. And, we are about positivity. And you are, as I say, in my view, one of the leading lights and have been. And whether you know it or not, you were part of the inspiration about setting up this podcast. Purely because how can we help the world and do things? Everyone does their little bit. I'm part of that, you're part of it. And therefore, really great to have you on board. So thank you for being my guest.
Ian, it's been a true pleasure. Thank you very much for making this so easy.
You're welcome. Thank you again. And look forward to having you on again.
In 10 years' time. Thank you.
In 10 years' time. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate us and subscribe. And feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. And if you have comments or ideas for future episodes, please send us an email. Thanks for being part of the Digital Talk community and for listening. Stay tuned.